1 minute. Yeah, am I visible?
Yes, now you're visible, ma'am. Great, ma'am. Thank you very much for joining. I think people are joining this. Will start in a minute or so, I guess. That should be fine.
Sure.
Okay. So, ma'am, you are based out of Gurgaon, I guess?
No, I am in Gurgaon.
You are in Gurgaon.
I lived in Delhi for 30 years.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Yeah, so shifted in Gurgaon only in 2015.
Okay, that's just 8 years, 8 years. That's great.
Yeah.
So you're born in the hills and you moved to Delhi now in a suburb of Delhi.
Yeah, I moved from hills. No, I came very slowly. First to Chandigarh.
Ah, okay.
So, yeah. First from Shimla to Chandigarh. That's when I got married. And then we shifted to Delhi.
Great. Honestly, did you like Delhi after being in Chandigarh, a city like Chandigarh?
Not really, but sometimes you don't have any option in life,
Right.
you know.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
so
not much into hills, but Chandigarh is as beautiful as one can think of.
Chandigarh is actually was my husband's hometown.
Ah,
So
okay.
his father actually was the one who was in that Corbusiers team when they built Chandigarh. So
Oh,
they lived in Chandigarh from 1954, the year it was completed,
right.
Chandigarh. And well, that was hometown.
Right.
But then see, what happened was that because of the terrorism problem in Punjab back in 1980s, early 80s, still in 1984.
Yes.
Uh, since my husband was an architect, so he thought that there won't be any, possibility of his starting his practice or anything there in Punjab anymore. So that's why. Then, meanwhile, he got, call from School of Planning and Architecture to join as an associate professor.
Right.
So we shifted to Delhi. Therefore, we shifted to Delhi. Yes.
Great.
So have you already started or
No, we can start. No, you can finish and then we'll start. I think you're saying something. So.
Yeah, that's it. So we were in Delhi and then we both got retired and we had been we were living in my father-in-law's house in Delhi, but then we constructed our own house in Gurgaon and then we shifted here. Yes.
All right. So yeah, you're lucky to have visited many states and many different cultures, certainly.
Cultures, yes. Basically Himachal,
yeah,
Punjab, and
Punjab
Delhi,
and
and Haryana now.
Yeah.
Now Haryana, yeah.
That's so well. Hello and welcome to Kitabi Baatein. I'm Abhishek, also known as Books Wale Bhaiya. My guest today is Anita Krishan, ma'am, and thank you very much for sparing time for this session. And yeah, it's an absolute honor to host you on my channel. So Anita Krishan ji is an educator for several decades, and she's the author of 5 books, including books on terrorism, fiction, as well as horror fiction. And this is her latest book, Ghost in the Dark Silence. And before that, she wrote another book on horror, Ghost in the Silent Hills, which is a national bestseller. Ma'am, so let's start with you, who wrote 5 books, one of them being a national bestseller, very well received by the readers. How did you start this journey of being an educator to an author?
Okay, first of all, good morning, Abhishek, and good morning, everyone who are with us today. And it's my pleasure and honor to be here with all of you today, sharing my life and my experiences. And yes, life is a journey itself. It's a long journey, and you have so many ups and downs in life. So that's what happened with me. I first, your youth, I spent on the mountains in Shimla, where I was born and brought up. Actually, I am a Himachali originally. And, having lived on the mountains, you have another sort of carefree life. So, but along with education, it was adventures and it was the beauty of the mountains that we were surrounded by. And I finished my education totally in Shimla. And after that, as it it was, in those days, the parents thought that was their duty to, settling the children would one
Yes.
thing mean, marrying off the daughters.
Right.
So 1977, January, I got married, moved to Chandigarh. Uh, and then I got busy in my life, you see, as a wife, as a mother, as joining another family. And meanwhile, of course, then we shifted to Delhi from Chandigarh, and my children were grown up and they had joined schools. So I found myself a job as well, as an educator in St. Anthony's School, as a senior teacher there of English literature. I had no idea about, my capability or my passion for writing. I had not discovered myself. But, when I was teaching, and when you're a teacher of English, usually what happens is that you are bound to tell a lot of stories to children.
Yes.
So, the stories started coming from my life, my experiences, my growing up years. That was one part. And second part is that, ever since I had left the mountains, I had left a part of my heart there. So
Right.
Mountains were always there in my heart, sending time and again a kind of nostalgia for having left that kind of a beautiful life. And that nostalgia, ultimately resulted in my first book. That is partly my autobiography of my growing up years on the mountains, along with my little dog, our adventures, Fluffy and me, yes. In fact, this book, Fluffy and Me, first came as Running Up the Hill. The first edition was titled Running Up the Hill, and this Fluffy and Me is the second edition. So once I started writing, there was no stopping it.
Right.
Yeah. So
yeah, because I guess in less than 10 years you got all your these books published. So
yeah, first book was Running Up the Hill was published in 2007.
2007. But
Then
after that, all these were published in lesser number of years.
Yes, the rest all work during that. In fact, I took a little early retirement also from work because it was difficult to cope up with my passion and my, responsibilities. So I took an early retirement.
So as you mentioned that whatever a writer writes, sometimes a part of his life journey is reflected. So I think which first of all is reflected in Fluffy and Me, and then you talked about terrorism in 2 Years of Jhelum and the other book. And as you said, you were the first-hand witness of the problems in 1984 when your husband decided to move from Punjab and hills, as we talked about. You were always fascinated with hills quite naturally as you were born there. So in a way, some of your books do reflect, I guess, what you have witnessed, seen, experienced in your life.
Absolutely.
Whether it's the hills and
whether it is terrorism, Actually, let me share one, the incident during the terrorism. I'm coming to the next book that I've written on, Kashmir terrorism. We were in Chandigarh, and when the terrorism problem was at the peak, and we lived in Sector 16, which was just behind the Rose Garden, and the police chief, Mr. Rubiro, was our neighbor. He was 2-3 houses away from where we were living. So that area had a lot of, guarding and a lot of police around and everything. And one fine day, we heard shots. And Chandigarh was very, very, despite the terrorism, we were a little careless. So, our houses, our gate would be open, the doors would be open. Nobody would, bother. That day when I was in the kitchen and I heard these shots being fired, I realized something was, going on. So first thing, came to my mind that I needed to close, the doors and make ourselves secure. While I was doing that, I saw few men running and then police chasing, and then, the shooting was going on. So next day papers, we came to know that in the Rose Garden, they had shot dead a few terrorists that day.
Oh, okay.
So that was the, direct witness. But why I went to Kashmir talking about it was few things. One thing, originally part of my family came from Kashmir.
Oh.
So 200 years ago, they had left Kashmir. Once again, an exodus like it happened in 1989. 200 years ago, when Ahmad Shah Abdali was, I think, the governor general of, I think he had taken over at Kashmir.
Yes.
And he had the same thing. There were a lot of atrocities committed against Kashmiri Pandits. It is said that once the Dal Lake got filled with the bodies of Kashmiri Pandits when, he was there. Those who refused to convert.
Convert, yeah.
And that was the time my ancestors ran for their lives. Like this time it happened, the exodus of Kashmiri Pandits. They ran for their lives.
Yeah.
And, from running through the, difficult terrains, and they reached Himachal. And that's how, since then, we have been living in Himachal.
Oh, okay.
So I had a little root, like my father would tell me these stories about his ancestors. And then, 2005, I was witness to a terrorist attack once again. And this time I was in Sarojini Nagar. It was, next day was Eid and Diwali together.
Yes.
And a bomb blasted barely, I would say about 20 meters from me.
Oh.
Not even 20 meters, very close.
Yes.
But there were so many, the crowd was so much that we heard, that blast, and we saw the things and fire flying into the air. Stampede was going to happen when, we just, few of us advised people not to run. And everybody listened to that. But next day I came to know that 40 people had died in just that single blast in Sarojini Nagar. And that set my mind thinking, what did the terrorists get out of it? Killing innocent people who they never knew, who had done them never any harm ever. And you just go and kill. So what kind of psyche these people were carrying. And it so happened, maybe you call it a destiny. Soon I went for a visit to Kashmir with my husband. He was called for a architectural jury by Kashmir University. So I accompanied him, and we were, taken around to places. But we were very quiet about discussing terrorism problem or politics with anyone there till those people themselves opened up. And the realization to me came that those people were, living a very difficult, tough life. Like we considered them, they're siding the terrorists. It wasn't that at all. Right. In fact, the driver who was driving us around told us that, this country across the border has finished Kashmir. Yeah. Like this, hamari to rozi roti khatam kar di, hamara ism khatam kar diya. So we are from a very comfortable life, we have been turned into paupers. Yes. So all these things, set me thinking, and then that laid base for writing Tears of Jhelum. Right. Followed by, of course, Despite Stolen Dreams.
Despite Stolen Dreams. So both the books deal with the same issue of terrorism.
Yeah, so, Despite Stolen Dreams is a sequel to Tears of Jhelum.
The sequel to, yes. So moving to your horror books. So one of the things I have noticed, I've read a fair bit on horror, watched many movies. We usually link hills and darkness to horror, and I've noticed in your books the theme somewhat was that first was hills and then was darkness. In fact, coincidentally, a lot of Indian horror movies by Ramsey Brothers was also shot at the hills. They usually shot at Mahabaleshwar and such locations. So what is this thing about hills which connect people to a genre like horror?
Well, see, having grown up on the hills, you have few very cherished memories. Yeah. And one of those memories are about, during my winter holidays in school. And, although global warming is very clearly visible on even the mountains,
Yes.
there's hardly has been any snowfall this
Yeah.
year on the mountains in Shimla. But we used to have, 4 or 5 very heavy snowfalls, like 3 to 4 feet of snow covering the whole landscape. And we would be house arrested. The children, and you can imagine the children who, with minus temperatures outside, we would go out, but you can't stay out for a very long, half an hour or so, you're within minus 10 degrees temperature. But the evenings used to be beautiful. So we used to have fire going on in the fireplace and the family sitting together and, sharing stories. So I was the youngest of my 4 siblings. And even my parents would join us telling stories. And many times these stories would turn to ghost stories.
Oh, okay.
Incidents. And, it's very exciting. Who doesn't love a good ghost story? But then afterwards, it used to be so frightening. So if you see, our house was also in a very secluded place.
Okay.
It was in the suburb of Shimla, surrounded by a very thick forest of pine, cedar, oak. And afterwards, I wouldn't move from even the room till somebody, even for going to the washroom, till somebody accompanied me. That kind of a fear, but it has a romance in itself.
Absolutely.
So when you go to the mountains, they're beautiful during the day, sunlight, lovely breeze, you can go for your treks and walks. But the moment the sun sets, it becomes so mystifying, and walking on the mountains in the dark is another experience in itself.
Absolutely.
And that sets maybe at the mind to imagining things. But they have been, like I'm telling you, like my parents also used to share ghost stories with us. I started, I had a little bag full of my own ghost stories, therefore, which I had collected listening to them. And some of them were the experiences of close family, relatives, and acquaintances, friends. So that's why I said based on true incidents, because, and one of them, that is a second story, of course, of the Silent Hills, is based on the experience my uncle, my father's younger brother, had experienced. The story is set in Wildflower Hall, which is the Oberoi's 5-star hotel today, but it used to be an agricultural institution then.
Okay.
So
this storytelling happened, you heard stories, and what all authors or any specific kind of genres you read in your childhood and young age, which shaped into you yourself, any specific authors or kind of books you liked? See,
Abhishek, when that era, I grew up, so I was born in 55, so 60s, and 76 I even finished my master's. So I've grown up in that era when we had no gadgets except a radio on a telephone, old style of a telephone, and no TV or no internet or no WhatsApp or Facebook or anything. So we children, grew up reading a lot. So I have read all kind of genres, see, from biographies by Irving Stone, The Agony and the Ecstasy kind, to Thomas Hardy or Charles Dickens, Perlis Buck. I used to love, the book, of course, The Good Earth, famous, the Peony, and then of course we loved Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes, Agatha Christie, Somerset Maugham. So we read all, and Arthur Haley. I don't know whether this generation is reading Arthur Haley. We used to read a lot of his thrillers. There used to be, and most of the books were converted into movies, Arthur Haley's.
Yes. So
all kinds of literature we used to read, yes. So that, when you're a good reader and a good listener, then somewhere you have stored all these memories, and one fine day it all comes out.
Of course. Especially what you read in your childhood, that always, in a way stays with you, definitely. So
okay, I want to share an experience with my listeners today. I was, final year in my college, and I've done my BSc actually. I did my graduation in science and then shifted to literature because I had fallen in love with, reading.
Oh, okay.
So I wanted to do my master's in literature. And when I was in final year BSc, we had an, inter-college. Actually, the university, Himachal University had organized a competition. It was a, debate competition. And I won a first prize in that debate competition. And that time, you can imagine, the price was 500 rupees. It was a huge money, huge money, 500 rupees. And something like, you can say, not even 5,000, maybe 25,000 rupees today.
Absolutely.
And I took those 500 rupees and directly went to, there were two bookshops in Shimla, the Asia bookshop and the Minerva bookshop.
Right.
They're still there today on
Yes.
the mall. And that's the bookshop I raided and came back home with the bundles and bundles of books. Spent all my money on books. So that was a kind of, craze we have for reading those days.
That's great. So you talked about like Arthur Haley, for example, many of his novels got converted into made into movies. In India, if we talk about horror, I think as far as I understand, it's a bit the other way around, because if you see, we had horror was introduced to the masses through celluloid. We had Ramsey brothers making a lot of movies and popularizing this horror genre, because as I said, as far as I understand, it's only in past couple of years or maybe a decade that we see more Indian horror authors emerging. You have written two books. We have Hari Kumar, Neil De Silva, and all who are making their names in horror genre. So I think for horror, it's a bit other way around.
Yeah,
first popularized, and then we had the Z Horror Show, which again everyone in their homes, watched horror. So what's your take on this? I mean, from movies to, and not the other way around, as it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. I agree with you. Absolutely. There wasn't much literature on horror written by, Indian writers, especially there were few by Ruskin Bond, few ghost stories by Ruskin Bond. Rudyard Kipling had written few, but then we won't call him an Indian writer as such.
An Indian writer, yes.
Yeah. So, but for me, it was totally different. I had the stories with me based on true experiences of people. But, they were with me. I never thought of, writing them. Till when I finished my book, Despite Stolen Dreams. That was the fourth book. So there was, a gap, and I was just desperately looking for a topic for my next book, because when you're passionate about writing, you get desperate if you don't have something to write. And I was looking for it, and my son suggested that, Mom, you have got a lot of ghost stories. People will love to read your ghost stories. You have been telling us those stories, and they're so interesting. So why don't you pen them down and, So I listened to him. I said, yeah, that's a good idea. Let me start writing. And I made a list of the stories I knew. And also then while I was writing the stories, I met, you see the book is divided into two parts.
Yes.
The second part is not from the mountains. The first 5 stories they are related to my family members, basically. All of them. And the second part was shared with me, which came, much later. So you see, there's a gap of the time period also. So the other ones were shared with me some came later. Almost when I had finished writing, one of the stories came from a lady who's my neighbor, much younger to me, of course, very young girl. She had been recently married or something. That story is based in Kolkata, if you see that.
Yeah.
That one came from my neighbor, and she shared that with me, and I realized, oh, that's another one. So that is how the stories kept on getting added.
So,
but it was not that I had any intention, just because I had the stories I wrote.
So how do you see this horror genre, shaping up in the future in India? We have more authors and more readers who are taking up horror, and now as due to this OTT thing, there are chances of books which got a good response may get made into movies. So how do you see especially horror as a genre picking up in India, like getting more popular?
I think absolutely, absolutely. Everyone loves, reading horror. I mean, like, I tell you, it is a release. They say it's a release of pent-up emotions when you're reading or watching the horror show
Yeah,
or reading a horror book. It gives a kind of a release and a kind of, satisfaction to you that you are safe,
yeah,
that kind of a. So it is, psychologists, they say that it's good to read, these horror stuff sometimes. And I think the horror genre is really picking up now.
yes,
I see many of them have come up, in this genre after, like you mentioned, Hari Kumar and Niels de Silva, and now we have many more who have come
yes,
with this genre. And I think it's picking up like, first we had that Stephen King, the king of horror, so,
yes,
in the international arena.
yes.
But now there are others who are competing in this field,
And
yes.
there is something about horror actually. If you talk about a deserted place which is believed to be haunted, everyone would have curiosity to go there. Even if they feel
Yes.
scared, there is
Yeah.
that curiosity. There's something, okay, I want to visit this or see this. Whether we talk of the haunted places in India or anything. So when I visited Rajasthan last year, we went to Bhangar, of course in daytime, but just out of the curiosity, okay, what is there?
I
कि
know.
देखें क्या है? So
I
that
know.
is the
I know.
kind of attraction everyone has towards horror, and I think this is one genre which does really well, I guess, on celluloid as well. We see the success of horror movies as well as horror TV show like Z horror show was, if I'm right, that was the first proper horror show on TV, and no doubt it got rave reviews. So, ma'am, other than horror, you wrote about terrorism, you wrote about your semi-autobiographical. So, maybe a little too early to ask, but what shall we expect from you in future? More of horror, more on terrorism, or
So,
what?
no, none of these now. But what I'm working for, actually, people are demanding more horror stuff. But then there is a limitation to, about ghost stories also.
Right.
Because most of the ghost experiences with people are more or less the same.
Yeah.
You see a ghost or you go to a haunted place and you have some kind of a feeling of being watched or surrounded by negative energy and things like that. So I right now my limitation for horror stories is completed probably or stalled for the time being. But I'm writing now, a sort of a story, a love story
Okay.
set with World War One on one side and the struggle for independence on the other.
Oh, okay.
It is
That's nice.
inspired actually by my father-in-law.
Okay.
I've spoken about it earlier also, that my father-in-law, uh, he lost his father when he was just 3 or 4 years old.
Okay.
And his mother had to take, her children and go and stay with her brother for the rest of her life. Rest of the life till, I mean, her children grew up.
Sure.
And he was never sent to any school.
Okay.
But that person, on his own, learned to read and write by looking at books or sitting with the children who are going to school, and later on to reading newspapers and keeping himself abreast, or then picking up books at home. Till he was a young boy when one of the school teacher discovered his talent, that he already knew a lot to read and write. So he made him sit for matriculation examination, which he passed with first division.
Oh, nice.
So without having gone to any school. And then the teacher helped him to also fill the forms for Roorkee Engineering College, Roorkee. It was called Thompson Engineering College for Roorkee, the biggest and the best Asian college for engineering that time, during the British time I'm talking about.
Right.
And he got selected. He got a scholarship as well.
Oh, nice.
And then I told you, he, joined, of course, after independence, he joined the PWD Department of Punjab. And then went on to become the chief engineer of Punjab. When Punjab was a huge state, the Haryana, part of Himachal was
also
in Punjab. So there were only 2 chief engineers, and he was one of them, of building and roads. So his story is so inspiring. He used to share a lot of other stories with me. And so keeping that as a base. So I'm working on my next book.
That's very great. I think that is something definitely to be read. And ma'am, so with these books, how has been your experience with getting your books published? I guess you are with Fingerprint Publishers since you started, writing. So how has been, especially with the first book when you did not have credentials as an author, no pedigree to talk of? How was that experience getting it published?
As usual, it happens with the authors. You have high dreams. So I went to, HarperCollins, or I went to Penguin. I sent my scripts to these. So everywhere there was rejection. Somebody said, and Rupa Publishers. I think I sent to 6 places and I got 6 rejections. Okay. Somebody said that, they may take after 3 years. Right now they were very busy. Somebody said, we're not publishing this genre at all. And finally, if you want to do something in life, Abhishek, you have to persevere. So I didn't give up. And especially, even J.K. Rowling was rejected 12 times for a Harry Potter.
Yes.
So mine was just halfway through. So I, came to know about these Prakash books. They were not Fingerprints Publishers that time. They were just Prakash books. And I went to meet, he was very kind of him to have given me time for a discussion. And when I went to meet him, so he said that they were very famous for coffee table books that time. And they only used to publish coffee table books. So he told me that they had recently started paperbacks and they would consider mine. And that's how the journey started. They published. 6 months later, they told me that they would publish my book. And running up the hill. I've been with them ever since.
And Prakash books, I think they are into book distribution actually. That's how they.
Fingerprints is their publishing house. It's owned by them.
Owned by them. So, ma'am, just 1-2 questions. One, we'll open it to the audience if they want to ask anything to you. So, ma'am, what advice would you like to give to aspiring writers?
Well, see, people, if you see at what the writing, the way it's going on these days, in last, I think, 20-25 years, more books have been published than were ever published even in 200 years.
Yes.
So easy access, because there's easy access to computer, it checks your grammar, it checks your spelling. You don't have to, those authors had to write, handwrite the script. So we should not, take it that since it's easy, we can write anything.
Right.
Whatever you write, a writer, it should come from your heart. You should feel it. Like when you, for characterization, my own experience is that I become that character myself. Right. I put myself in that place as that character when I'm writing. So one thing, we have a lot of responsibility towards our readers. So what we write, because we can really, influence the minds, and especially of young readers.
Yes.
So it is a responsibility to write very carefully. Our language, the arguments, or whatever we are projecting, even if it is about love. It has to be very, very careful writing.
Of course.
Yeah.
Great. So that's definitely some useful and sane piece of advice. So to all the audience, you have any questions to ma'am, please write in the comment box and I will take it up. So let me see if there's any questions already. Okay, so it's not a question, but it's by Believer of Destiny. Hi, ma'am. She used to teach us English in St. Anthony's School. Lots of love, Anjali.
Anjali, okay. Anjali, what?
No, she has written only Anjali, and her name on Insta is Believer of Destiny.
Yeah. Hello, Anjali. Nice that you are here today. So
Yeah,
she's a
Anjali,
believer in
comments
destiny.
if you're still there. Coincidentally,
I
when I put that picture with you when we met at Bharison's Khan Market, I put that on Insta, and one of your students was my colleague in EY, Ishita
oh,
Agarwal. She used to teach
okay,
us.
okay. That's
I think
nice.
one good thing about being a teacher is that people remember you even after a long time.
They remember your school teachers, definitely. Even what about you, Abhishek? I'm sure you remember all your teachers, especially, the ones who had influenced you a lot during
Absolutely.
your growing up time. Yes. So she's talking about believing in destiny. Yes, I do believe in destiny too. I believe I'm a very staunch believer in destiny. If you believe in God, then you believe in destiny.
Destiny,
Because
definitely.
sometimes you see that your paths are carved. You have no control at times over it.
Yes. No, that's very true, and especially your life experiences. You witnessed things like terrorism, which you have no control about, and as you talked about the Kashmir incident 200 years back, of course, you yourself, can't do much about it. You can't go and change the mind of people out there that okay, there's no point in violence, and also as at times, of course, you have to accept things as they are. Okay, so there's one message from Gayatri God. Ma'am, I read your books. I was also student in St. Anthony's and you taught us English. So this is,
Gayatri Kaur. I remember her. I remember Gayatri. Yes. Hello, Gayatri. So how are you doing?
yeah, Gayatri, you can write a response in the comment box and we will be able to read it from here.
Okay. I think I'm fine with just verbally. I'm sure they can hear me.
Other guys, any other question, please feel free to write in the comment box and ma'am will take it up. Else, if there isn't any questions to ma'am, then in that case, I think we can definitely call it a day. Uh, okay, okay,
Okay.
ma'am,
So
Gayatri
English.
responded. Yeah,
Yeah, Gayatri's done her MA in English. Wonderful.
completed MA
So
English. Yeah. All right. So I don't see questions. So I think we can call it a ma'am. Once again, thank you very much for accepting my request and being here on Insta. And wish you all the best for your future books. And to all the audience, those who have come here, again, thank you very much for joining.
thank you, Abhishek. Thank you for the invitation, and I really enjoyed our discussion.
Same
And
here.
I hope the listeners also enjoyed it, or
Absolutely.
the audience enjoyed it. Thank you, and best of luck to all of you, to you too, Abhishek.
Thank you,
And I
ma'am. Have a
think
good day.
you are one of the people who encourage, everyone, into reading a
Yeah.
lot,
Yeah.
and
Thank you, ma'am.
and that's wonderful.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Have a good day, ma'am.